Welcome, dear listeners. Tonight, let your thoughts drift gently as we take you on a peaceful journey. This is a space for calm, for quiet moments, and for the kind of stories that settle your heart and slow your breath. Make yourself comfortable, close your eyes if you wish, and allow the world to soften around you. Now, let's begin with tonight's story. Today's story is titled, The Keeper of the Bald Legacy of Truth. Act 1, The Staircase to the Attic. In the stillness of a late autumn evening, a soft hush had settled over the countryside. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their leaves whispering secrets to the wind. A fine mist hovered just above the ground, and the sky, tinged with hues of plum and indigo, promised rain by nightfall. Lanterns glowed faintly from a distant farmhouse, scattered dots of golden warmth blinking through the cool air. Alaric stood at the foot of the creaking staircase that led to the attic room, one hand gripping the wooden banister as if touching memory itself. It had been years since he'd returned to the old hilltop house where he spent his childhood summers. Back then, the attic had been his hideaway, a room woven from wood, dust, and the dreams of a boy who once believed that anything was possible. He took a breath and ascended. The steps groaned under his weight, complaining like old bones. The scent of time greeted him, aged cedar, mothballs, and the faintest trace of lavender from a sachet long forgotten in the folds of a dresser drawer. Cobwebs hugged the corners of the stairwell. Every step was a whisper from the past, calling him by a name only the house remembered. At the top, the door stood slightly ajar. A soft breath of air drifted out, carrying with it a subtle warmth. Alaric pushed it open gently. The attic room unfolded before him like a long-lost journal. It was smaller than he remembered, and yet the walls held vastness within them. Slanted wooden beams framed the ceiling like the ribs of a great sleeping beast. The floor, polished from years of use, bore the marks of laughter and solitude alike, scratches from a rocking chair, faint circles from old candle holders, a patch near the window where a rug had once laid thick and soft. At the far end of the room stood a bed, modest but inviting, draped in a patchwork quilt stitched from forgotten seasons. The mattress, though worn, had a distinct dip in the middle where countless nights of dreams had been conjured and forgotten. Beside it, an antique nightstand held a brass lamp shaped like a crescent moon. It still worked. Alaric flipped the switch, and a soft golden glow spread across the room, gently pushing back the shadows. He set down his satchel and coat, his boots landing with a quiet thud on the floorboards. Outside, the first drops of rain began to fall, slow, deliberate, rhythmic, as if the sky was easing into its own lullaby. The rain was what brought him here, in a way. After all, it had always been in the rain that he'd found clarity. Alaric moved toward the arched window at the room's end. It was dusted with a fine film of time, but the view beyond remained unchanged. Rolling hills dipped into distant valleys, and far below, a cluster of lights marked the nearby village of Lindywick. Beyond it, dark woods rustled gently, bending to the breeze. He opened the window slightly. Cool air kissed his cheeks. The sound of the rain, once distant, now felt close enough to touch. It pattered on the roof tiles above, the window ledge, and the overgrown ivy climbing the stone walls. It wasn't a heavy rain, more like a gentle, persistent tapping, as if the world were reminding him it still existed outside his thoughts. Alaric stood there for a long while, watching, listening. He was no longer the boy who used to sit on this windowsill, dreaming of dragons and far-off lands. The years had brought lines to his face, a heaviness to his shoulders, and a quiet ache that lingered behind his eyes. And yet, as he stood in that room once again, he felt something loosen inside him. Perhaps it was the sound of the rain, or the way the attic seemed to breathe with him, exhaling the past and inhaling the present. He glanced around and noticed that the bookshelf was still there. Tucked into the wall near the door, it held an assortment of worn paperbacks, dusty journals, and yellowing maps. He ran his fingers across the spines, pausing on a leather-bound sketchbook that once belonged to his sister, Elaine. She'd loved to draw the attic's corners, imagining secret doors and hidden staircases that led to magical places. He smiled, just a little, and carried the sketchbook over to the bed. He sat, the quilt sighing beneath him, and flipped open the first page. A drawing of the room greeted him, rendered in delicate graphite, full of light and shadow. There was the window, the bed, even the crack in the floorboard he used to drop pebbles through. On the next page was a note. To those who find peace in high places, where the rain can reach the soul. Elaine. His throat tightened. It was as if she were still here. Still watching. Still waiting for him to remember. And perhaps that was why he came back. Not just for the rain, or the room, or the memories, but for something he hadn't yet named. A feeling just beyond the edge of his understanding. Something that could only be found in places where dreams had once been real. He set the book down, stood, and walked back to the window. A sudden breeze carried with it the faintest scent of lilac, his grandmother's favorite flower. He leaned out slightly, catching sight of the small garden below, wild and overgrown. Somewhere in the distance, a fox's cry split the night, answered by the hoot of an owl from the nearby forest. Alaric closed the window gently. The attic, the rain, the scent of lilac, Elaine's sketchbook, they had all returned to him, not just as memories, but as fragments of something deeper. A story waiting to unfold again. He would stay. And maybe, just maybe, he'd write it down. But not tonight. Tonight, he would sleep under the slanted ceiling, wrapped in a quilt of the past, listening to the rain write lullabies on the roof. And when morning came, he would begin again. Act 2, The Sketch in the Rain. Morning crept into the attic on tiptoe. Soft gray light seeped through the arched window, slipping past the curtains like a gentle intruder. The rain had not ceased. If anything, it had deepened into a more persistent rhythm, steady, like a heartbeat. Outside, the world was mist-wrapped and glistening. Inside, the attic felt hushed, sacred, as if the night had cast a spell that still lingered in the beams and corners. Alaric stirred beneath the quilt. He didn't wake all at once. His consciousness drifted between dreams and reality, tethered by the sound of raindrops on the roof and the faint scent of lilac that still lingered in the air. A dream had visited him, strange, soft, but vivid. In it, he had followed a trail of light through a hallway that stretched impossibly long. At the end, there had been a door with a symbol etched into the wood, a crescent moon wrapped in ivy. When he finally opened his eyes, he was not startled. There was only calm. And something, expectant. He sat up slowly, the quilt falling from his shoulders. The attic hadn't changed overnight, but something about it felt different. The golden lamp beside the bed had gone out on its own, its switch now cool to the touch. The room was lit solely by the pale light of day, soft as breath. On the nightstand, Elaine's sketchbook lay closed. He picked it up. The leather cover was slightly worn at the edges, its corners curled with time. As he opened it again, he noticed that a new page had become loose, one that hadn't been visible last night. Tucked between drawings of ivy-covered stairwells and moonlit windows, there was a folded slip of parchment. Alaric paused. His fingers tingled as he pulled it free and unfolded it. It was a map drawn in pencil, soft and detailed. It resembled the layout of the attic, but not quite. There were additions, a small hatch under the bed, marked with the same crescent moon symbol from his dream. Beneath it, a winding staircase descended into something labeled the underroom. The underroom. He frowned and looked toward the bed. Could it be? He knelt, pushed aside the rug, and ran his hands along the wooden floor. There a faint groove. Barely noticeable unless you were searching. He pressed on the spot indicated in the sketch. A quiet click. Then the wood shifted. A section of the floor lifted slightly, revealing a hatch no wider than his shoulders. The iron latch was cold to the touch, but it gave way easily. Alaric hesitated, heart beating faster, not from fear but from that same feeling of expectancy. What had Elaine been hiding here? He opened the hatch. A narrow wooden staircase curled downward into darkness. It was dry, dust-lined, and strangely inviting. He leaned down and peered into the shadows, then fetched the old brass lamp and lit it. The warm light poured down the steps, revealing rough stone walls and cobweb-laced corners. It was real. The underroom existed. Alaric descended slowly. Each step creaked under his weight, but the staircase held firm. The scent of cedar and earth filled the space. When he reached the bottom, he found himself in a small chamber, a forgotten cellar of sorts, though it bore no signs of storage or disuse. Instead, the walls were lined with drawings. Dozens of them. Some were sketches like the ones in Elaine's book, windows, stairwells, moonlit gardens. Others were stranger, glowing shapes hovering above beds, shadowy figures outlined in silver ink, and a recurring symbol, always the crescent moon twined with ivy. At the center of the room stood a pedestal, and upon it, a second sketchbook. This one was older, bound in dark green leather and secured with a ribbon of faded silk. Alaric reached for it slowly, reverently. He untied the ribbon. The first page was a letter, written in delicate, flowing script. To the next dreamer who finds this room. You are not the first to follow the rain. Nor will you be the last. The attic is a doorway, but only if your heart remembers how to listen. Follow the sketches. They will lead you. E. T. E. T. Elaine Thorne. Alaric exhaled. He turned the next few pages, more sketches, but different now. Less of the attic, more of the world beyond it. Forests drawn in dreamlike detail, rivers that glowed in moonlight, and a gate shaped like an arch of bone and starlight. There were notes too, in the margins. Found it again last night after listening to the wind at 3:03 a.m. He follows the same path. I can hear his footsteps in the dream. The underroom is expanding. I think it wants to be remembered. He looked up. The room seemed to shift around him, slightly. Not physically, but emotionally. The silence held a breath. Alaric returned to the pedestal and sat down cross-legged on the cool stone floor. He opened the book to a blank page in the back, pulled a pencil from the lampstand he'd brought, and began to draw. It was the first thing he'd drawn in years. His hand moved with ease, as if guided by something old and familiar. A staircase. A tree bent in the wind. A figure standing alone beneath rain clouds. He didn't know what it meant yet. But he knew he had to follow it. Not just the sketches, but the story. His story. And Elaine's. Together. Act 3, The Door Beneath the Dream. The storm had eased by nightfall, retreating to a gentle drizzle that whispered through the gutters and tapped softly on the attic's window pane. Alaric sat on the bed once again, the old sketchbook in his lap and the green leather journal from the underroom resting beside him like a trusted companion. He hadn't left the attic all day. Not because he was trapped, but because something inside him had changed. The air felt different. The room felt alive. As if every beam and board were listening now. As if Elaine herself still wandered these walls, leaving behind echoes in pencil and paper. He lit the brass lamp, casting a golden glow across the pages once more. The fireplace crackled faintly behind him, its embers pulsing like a slow, steady heartbeat. Alaric turned to a blank page. His pencil hovered. Then moved. At first, it was aimless. Lines curved and collided like thoughts without anchors. But soon, shapes began to take form, familiar, yet distant. A winding staircase with no end. A field of flowers beneath a violet sky. A door carved into the side of a hill, half buried in ivy. And just as he finished shading the edges of the door, he felt a shift in the air. Not a breeze. A pull. His eyelids grew heavy. The fire dimmed in his vision. The attic melted around him, soft and slow, like candle wax under the sun. He felt his breath grow long and deep as sleep took hold. But it wasn't ordinary sleep. It was the kind of sleep that opens something. The dream unfolded. He stood on the edge of the forest. It was twilight, though no sun hung in the sky. Only the silvery blue glow of an unseen source lit the path ahead. Trees arched overhead, their branches laced with tiny glowing spores, pulsing faintly with every breath of wind. The air shimmered, humming low and steady, like the first note of a lullaby. Alaric stepped forward. His boots made no sound against the moss-covered ground. To his left, a brook wound between stones, its water moving backward against the current. The trees whispered, not in words, but in feelings: nostalgia, sorrow, wonder. He followed the path. It bent and turned through the dream forest, until finally, it opened into a clearing. In the center stood the door exactly as he had drawn it. Wooden, curved, and blanketed in ivy. The symbol of the crescent moon was etched into its arch, just as it had been in the underroom. He approached. His hand reached out, fingers brushing the cold metal handle. He hesitated. Not out of fear, but recognition. Something lived behind this door, something that remembered him. Or perhaps, something he had forgotten. He turned the handle. The door opened inward. Inside was not a room, but a sky. Stars stretched endlessly in every direction. Floating platforms of stone hovered like stepping stones in an infinite sea of dark blue ether. Wisps of silver light danced between them like fireflies. And standing on the nearest stone, facing away from him, was a figure in a long coat. Alaric stepped through. The stone was solid beneath him, though it pulsed faintly, as if alive. He walked slowly toward the figure, heart thrumming. The figure didn't turn. But Alaric knew. Elaine. He whispered. The figure turned. And it was her. But not as he remembered. She looked older, wiser, as if she had lived 1,000 lives in dreams. Her eyes glowed softly, like starlight filtered through water. She smiled, and it was the same smile from childhood, the one that always said, "I know something you don't yet." "You came," she said, voice echoing not in his ears, but inside his mind. "I followed the sketches," he replied. She stepped closer. "There's more to remember. More to find." He looked around. "Is this your world?" "No," she said gently. "Ours." With that, she lifted her hand and pointed to the stars. Lines of light connected the constellations, forming symbols, patterns, memories. A treehouse on a rainy day. A blue ribbon lost in the wind. A letter left in the hollow of a tree. "The attic remembers everything," Elaine said. "It's a doorway to memory. To possibility. But it needs a dreamer to keep it alive." Alaric felt a weight lift from his chest. For years, he had carried silence about her, about the house, about what was lost. But now, in this strange sky between sleep and stars, he understood. He wasn't here to grieve. He was here to remember. Elaine stepped back, her form beginning to blur at the edges. "I'm not always here," she said, voice already growing distant. "But the door will be. Follow the light. Listen to the rain." And then she was gone. The stars dimmed. The sky spun. Alaric fell gently, as if into a warm ocean, and he woke. The fire had gone out. The attic was quiet. Outside, the rain had stopped. Sunlight poured through the arched window, soft and golden. Birds chirped beyond the glass, and the wind stirred the curtains with lazy fingers. He sat up, breath catching in his throat. On the nightstand lay the sketchbook, open to a new page. Not drawn by his hand. It showed the door in the forest clearing. And beneath it, written in Elaine's unmistakable script, "Dreamers remember. That's how we find our way home." Act 4, The Whisper of the Village. The sun crept higher through the morning mist, softening the world with its golden hush. A line of birds fluttered across the sky outside the attic window, their wings slicing the quiet air like ink strokes across parchment. Alaric sat still on the bed, the dream still wrapped around his thoughts like morning fog. He could feel it lingering in the air, the scent of stars, the shimmer of silver lights, and the fading warmth of Elaine's voice. The sketchbook on the nightstand remained open to the page she had left. Dreamers remember. That's how we find our way home. He traced the words with a fingertip. Home. The attic felt like that now. Not just a room but a beacon. He stood, stretching slowly. His limbs were heavy, not from fatigue, but from thought. The underroom called to him, yes, but something else pulled at him this morning. Something quieter. A tug just beyond the walls. Alaric crossed to the window and looked down. There, in the valley below, the village of Lindywick stirred to life. A narrow wisp of chimney smoke curled from one of the cottages, and a figure tiny from this distance pushed open a shop's wooden shutters. The village seemed unchanged by time. Just as it had been in his childhood summers, crooked cobblestones, ivy-covered stone walls, and a rhythm that pulsed slower than the rest of the world. It had been years. He hadn't spoken to anyone there since the funeral. Since the house passed quietly into his name. Since Elaine's disappearance. Or death. He still didn't know which word fit. But today, the village called. He left the attic an hour later, bundled in his coat and scarf, the cold morning biting gently at his cheeks as he walked down the forest path toward Lindywick. Leaves crunched underfoot, wet with the night's rain. The air smelled of pine, moss, and chimney soot. As he reached the outer edge of the village, a memory flickered. He and Elaine, younger, racing down the same trail in summer light, her laughter trailing behind like a ribbon in the wind. He paused at the first cottage. The sign read Thistle and Thread, a tailor's shop once run by an old woman named Myrna. The door creaked open as he passed, and a woman stepped out, blinking in surprise. "Alaric Thorne," she said softly. It took him a moment to place her. "Then Mari Holloway." She smiled. Her eyes hadn't changed. Still warm, still curious. "You came back." "For a while," he said. "Just revisiting." Her gaze lingered on him, then drifted toward the edge of his coat where a corner of Elaine's sketchbook peeked out. "You're staying at the old house?" He nodded. Mari's voice lowered slightly. "Do the lights still flicker at 3 a.m.?" Alaric blinked. "You remember that?" "Everyone remembers strange things about your house," she said. "My mother used to say it was a place built from someone's unfinished story." Alaric felt a chill, but not from the air. He thanked her, made brief small talk, then moved on. But the words echoed. Unfinished story. He stopped by the bakery, then the apothecary, and finally the village green, where a bench sat beneath a great willow tree. And everywhere he went, people remembered. Little things. Like the way Elaine would hum while walking. Or how lights in the attic window flickered in strange rhythms. Or how the cats in the village always followed her for blocks, like silent guardians. And then came the shopkeeper at the antique store, an older man named Bramwell, who wore spectacles thick as glass tiles. "You're her brother," he said, voice soft with recognition. "Elaine's." "Yes." Bramwell opened a drawer beneath the counter and pulled out a parcel wrapped in linen and tied with red thread. He slid it across the counter. "She left this here," Bramwell said. "The day before she disappeared. Told me to keep it safe in case you ever returned." Alaric's hands trembled slightly as he untied the thread. Inside was a small, dark blue notebook. Plain. Unlabeled. But when he opened it, the first page made his breath catch. To Alaric. "If you're reading this, then the attic has awakened again. There are things I never told you. Because they weren't mine to tell. But now they are. And I need you to finish what I began. Follow the line between sleep and rain." E. Below the note was a strange diagram. A map, perhaps, or a symbol. A spiral that twisted inward toward a single point. Around it, tiny runes encircled the spiral like orbiting moons. At the center, a mark he had now seen too many times to ignore. The crescent moon wrapped in ivy. He closed the notebook. The wind picked up slightly, rustling the shop's wind chimes. Somewhere in the distance, thunder rolled again, soft and deep. The storm hadn't ended, it had simply stepped aside. Waiting. Alaric turned to leave. The village behind him, the house ahead. The path between them now no longer just earth and stone, but memory and purpose. And tonight, when the rain returned, he would open the hatch once more. Act 5, The Spiral Below. By the time Alaric returned to the hilltop house, dusk had stretched its lavender fingers across the sky. The valley below glowed in amber and shadow, and once again, the hush of rain trailed in behind him as he stepped through the front door. He hadn't realized how much time had passed in the village. Now, the house welcomed him not as a stranger, but as something more, an inheritor. Not just of property, but of the questions, the memories, and the quiet magic that threaded every floorboard and stone. The blue notebook lay in his coat pocket. He lit the attic lamp as he returned upstairs, the golden light flickering across the walls like something breathing. On the bed, Elaine's sketchbook and the green leather journal waited. But tonight, he opened the new notebook. He turned the page past her message. The spiral symbol returned, and beneath it, a new map. But this one was unlike the others, more detailed, more layered. It didn't just show the underroom, it showed something beneath it. A second door, hidden in shadow. A phrase was scrawled beneath the diagram, in handwriting less steady than Elaine's usual script. The memory is sealed in the vault of echoes. Find the whisper key. Alaric read it again. Vault of echoes. Whisper key. He exhaled slowly, then rose from the bed. The storm had returned, as if on cue. Rain whispered on the windows, thunder murmured deep behind the clouds. The air in the attic had shifted. He could feel it in the floor, the walls. The lamp's glow pulsed a little brighter. The house was listening again. Alaric crossed the room, pulled back the rug, and opened the hatch to the underroom. He descended with more certainty this time. The wooden steps creaked under his boots, but the way no longer felt unfamiliar. At the bottom, the stone chamber glowed with the warmth of his lantern, and the sketches on the wall seemed to lean forward into the light, eager, waiting. He stepped to the center pedestal. The green journal was there, untouched. But something new had appeared beside it. A key. Small. Metallic. Shaped like a feather curled into a spiral. Alaric picked it up and immediately felt the room breathe around him. A wind that came from nowhere. A hush. And then, a sound. Faint. Like a voice whispered through water. Not words. Just memory. He turned toward the back wall, where a curtain of ivy had been drawn in pencil years ago by Elaine, but now it rippled. The sketch had changed. It wasn't a drawing anymore. It was a door. Or rather, it was becoming one. The stone behind the ivy seemed to shimmer faintly, and as Alaric stepped forward, the outline of a door revealed itself. A tiny keyhole sat at its center, no larger than a coin. The whisper key fit perfectly. He turned it. A breath escaped the wall, and the door slid open, not with a creak, but with a sigh, like something long asleep was finally waking. Inside, the room was round and silent. Unlike the underroom, this chamber felt ancient, its walls carved with symbols that danced when light touched them. Along the curved walls were shelves, and on each shelf sat a jar. Dozens of them, each one glowing faintly from within. Alaric stepped closer to the nearest jar. Inside swirled a soft silver mist. As he stared, the mist began to move, forming shapes. A garden path. A girl chasing butterflies. A moment frozen in laughter. A memory. Not his, but real. He turned to another jar. A rainy night. Elaine writing by candlelight. A shadow moving behind her, tall, indistinct. Another jar. A pair of hands, his holding Elaine's sketchbook for the first time as a child. The vault of echoes. It wasn't a metaphor. It was literal. This was where memories were stored, preserved, protected. The attic, the underroom, this vault, they were part of something much older than he had ever understood. Not just a place of dreams, but a library of lived moments. A bridge between lives, times, and those who dared to remember. At the center of the vault, another pedestal. This one held a small wooden box, covered in carved vines and moon symbols. Alaric opened it carefully. Inside was a note. The vault chooses what you see. But if you listen, truly listen, it will let you remember what was taken. Not all memories belong to the past. Below the note lay a stone pendant, inscribed with the same spiral. He picked it up. And in that instant, the vault spoke. Not with a voice, but with vision. His mind flooded with light, color, sound. A memory not his own. A woman running through rain-soaked forest paths. Lanterns swaying. A scream in the dark. A door slamming. Elaine's voice frantic, desperate. Hide it in the vault, he mustn't find it. Not yet. Then silence. Then black. Alaric stumbled back. The jars flickered around him, and the pendant pulsed in his palm. Whatever Elaine had hidden here, it was more than memory. It was a secret. One someone had wanted buried. And now, the vault had given him a glimpse. Not all memories belong to the past. Some are from what's coming. Alaric clutched the pendant and turned back toward the stairway. The door behind him slid shut. The whisper key vanished in his hand. The path was set now. He wasn't just remembering Elaine's story anymore. He was stepping into it. Act 6, The Keeper of the Vault. The stone pendant in Alaric's palm pulsed once, twice, and then fell still. The vault of echoes behind him seemed to hold its breath, the air thick with the weight of secrets too long kept. He stood there for a moment, the silence pressing in, before the lantern's flame flickered and cast a long shadow across the walls. The jars had stopped glowing, but the echoes of their memories still lingered in his mind, fragments of a past he wasn't sure he was ready to confront. His heart raced, but he steadied himself. The stone pendant was cool in his hand, smooth as glass, yet as heavy as a decision he couldn't yet make. What had Elaine hidden here? What had she wanted him to find? With a deep breath, Alaric stepped back, his footsteps muted on the stone floor. The vault's door, which had opened so effortlessly, now loomed before him as if waiting for him to take the next step. He left the vault. The underroom felt different now, less like a forgotten relic, and more like a living thing that had stirred, awakened by his presence. The lantern flickered again, casting shadows that seemed to stretch and twist. Alaric's mind was still spinning with the images from the vault, the faces, the voices, the things he hadn't understood. As he climbed the stairs back to the attic, the house seemed to shift around him. The air was heavier now. The whisper of the storm outside had grown louder, and the house creaked, as if it too was remembering something. Alaric pushed open the attic door. The room was as it had always been. The bed, the lamp, the desk piled with old maps and journals. But something had changed. The light from the lamp flickered once more, casting an eerie glow on the walls. And there, sitting in the chair by the window, was a figure. A woman. She was tall, cloaked in shadow, but there was something about her presence that felt oddly familiar. Her face was obscured by the hood of her cloak, but her posture was straight, poised. Her hands rested gently in her lap, the fingers curled slightly as if holding something precious. Alaric froze. He didn't know why, but he felt that he had seen this figure before. The woman spoke without turning. Her voice was low, but clear. "You found it, haven't you?" she asked, her tone both familiar and strange. The vault. The memories. Alaric stepped forward, heart pounding in his chest. "Who are you?" His voice was hoarse, uncertain. "How did you get in here?" The woman finally turned, and Alaric's breath caught. It was Elaine. But it wasn't the Elaine he remembered. The woman in front of him looked older, her eyes deeper, like they had witnessed countless years pass. She smiled gently, her lips curling in a knowing way. "You're not ready to understand everything," she said softly, her eyes locking with his. "But you are ready to begin." Alaric opened his mouth to speak, but the words caught in his throat. His mind raced. He had seen Elaine's face in the vault, but this woman, this figure, was not the same. "You have questions," Elaine continued. "But the truth is, there are things even I cannot explain. The vault, what it holds, what it protects, it's not just about remembering. It's about choosing what to remember, and what to forget. What do you mean? Alaric asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elaine stood and slowly approached him, her presence overwhelming the space. There are doors, Alaric. Many doors. Some lead to the past. Others lead to the future. Some are locked away, buried beneath layers of memory. The vault is one of those doors. She raised her hand, and the air around them seemed to shift. A subtle ripple passed through the room, as if time itself was bending. What's hidden in the vault isn't just for you, she continued. It's for all of us. For everyone who's been touched by this place. Alaric's heart raced. Touched by this place? He repeated. What do you mean? Elaine stepped closer, her eyes darkening. This house was built on more than just stone and wood. It was built on a promise that would transcend time and space. The vault was created to protect a secret that no one was meant to uncover. She paused, the weight of her words sinking into the room. You, Alaric, she said, are the keeper now. Alaric's mind spun. The keeper? Of what? Of memories. Of secrets. You're not the first, she continued. But you may be the last. A cold shiver ran down Alaric's spine. The woman in front of him was not just a ghost from the past. She was something more. Something connected to the vault, to the house, to everything that had happened here. Why me? He asked, his voice trembling. Why did you choose me? Elaine looked down at the floor, then back up at him. Her gaze softened, as if with a mixture of regret and resolve. I didn't choose you. The house did. The vault did. It knows what you are capable of. It knows what you've forgotten. Alaric opened his mouth to speak again, but before he could, the room suddenly grew darker. The light from the lamp flickered wildly before going out entirely. For a split second, they were plunged into complete darkness. Then, with a soft hum, the pendant in his pocket began to glow. A cold, distant voice echoed through the room. The keeper has arrived. The story begins again. The words resonated in Alaric's chest, and in that moment, he understood. The vault had been waiting for him. The memories. The secrets. Everything was coming back. But this time, he would be the one to decide what was revealed. Alaric's hand tightened around the pendant. What now? He asked, his voice steadying. Elaine looked at him one last time, her smile fading into a shadow of something else, something distant, yet familiar. Now, you choose. And with that, she disappeared. The room fell silent. But Alaric knew that his journey was far from over. Act 7, The Keeper's Path. The silence in the attic hung heavily in the air, the faintest creak of wood beneath Alaric's boots the only sound in the room. The light from the brass lamp had gone out completely, and the house seemed to hold its breath in anticipation. Alaric stood frozen in the center of the room, the pendant from the vault still warm in his hand, its soft glow illuminating the space around him in ethereal light. The words lingered in his mind: the keeper has arrived. The story begins again. But what did it mean? What was the story that had to be told? And why had Elaine left him with this burden, this power, and this knowledge? He moved slowly toward the window. The storm outside had finally passed, leaving behind a still, damp world. The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the land, and the soft rustling of trees filled the air. It was as if the whole world had paused, waiting for him to make the next move. Alaric's mind raced. The vault had shown him memories that weren't his. Fragments of Elaine's life, of her struggle, her decisions, and the mystery she had kept hidden. He could still hear her voice, her final words before she disappeared: "You choose." But what was there to choose? Was he meant to protect the vault, or to open it? To remember what had been forgotten, or to leave the past buried where it lay? He didn't have the answers. Not yet. But as the evening shadows stretched across the room, Alaric felt an unmistakable pull toward the house itself, toward the underroom, toward the vault, and toward the secret he was destined to uncover. The keeper had a path to walk, and it would not be an easy one. Alaric made his way down the staircase, the pendant still warm against his chest. The house felt different now, almost alive with energy. As he reached the bottom of the stairs, he glanced toward the study, Elaine's old study. The door was slightly ajar. It had always been a place of mystery for him, a room filled with books, sketches, and notes that Elaine had never quite finished. There were no signs of life in the study now, but something about it seemed to hum with quiet expectation. He stepped inside. The room was just as it had been when he last saw it. Bookshelves filled with leather-bound tomes, and a large desk piled high with yellowing papers. In the corner, a brass telescope pointed toward the window, as if waiting for the night sky to reveal its secrets. But it was the desk that drew Alaric's attention. On the desk lay a single envelope sealed with wax, its surface marked with the same crescent moon symbol that had appeared in Elaine's sketches. Alaric moved closer, his breath catching in his throat as he picked it up. The wax was cold beneath his fingers, and the paper inside was thick, almost ancient. He broke the seal. Inside was a letter, written in Elaine's handwriting, though the ink had faded with time. Alaric, if you are reading this, then the vault has called to you. The memories are not just for you to keep. They are for you to understand. You will face a choice soon, one that will determine not just the fate of this house, but the fate of everything that came before it. The vault will show you things, but it will not reveal everything. Some paths must remain hidden. The keeper's path is never easy. It is not meant to be. I have hidden one more secret from you. You will find it in the heart of the forest, where the trees bend and the moon casts its shadow. The key to everything you seek lies there. Trust yourself, Alaric. And trust the house. Alaric felt a weight settle in his chest. The heart of the forest. The trees bend. The key to everything. He folded the letter carefully and set it back on the desk, his mind reeling with the implications of Elaine's words. The vault had shown him memories. But now it was clear there was more. There was something hidden deeper within the house, something buried in the forest, waiting for him to find it. The storm had passed, but another journey awaited him. Alaric spent the rest of the evening preparing. He gathered supplies: water, food, and the pendant, which he tucked safely into his coat pocket. The house had settled into an eerie stillness, as if waiting for him to leave, to begin the journey Elaine had set in motion. He made his way to the front door, the air outside crisp and cool, with a bite of frost on the breeze. The sky was clear now, the stars beginning to shimmer above, like 1,000 eyes watching over him. He paused before stepping onto the path leading into the forest, a sense of trepidation filling his chest. This was it. The next step. The journey that would reveal the truth, or bury it forever. The trees loomed ahead, their branches swaying in the wind. The forest was dense, its shadows long and dark. Alaric's footsteps were muffled by the earth beneath him, the only sound the occasional crack of a twig or the distant rustle of leaves. As he ventured deeper into the forest, the air grew colder. The path narrowed, winding through the thick woods. It was eerily quiet, as if even the forest was holding its breath. Finally, after what seemed like hours of walking, Alaric arrived at the clearing. The trees here were ancient, their trunks gnarled and twisted. At the center of the clearing stood an enormous stone, smooth, almost as if it had been shaped by hand. Carved into its surface was the same symbol, the crescent moon entwined with ivy. Alaric approached the stone slowly, the pendant growing warmer against his chest. The clearing seemed to pulse with energy, as though the earth itself was alive. He reached out and touched the stone. The air around him hummed. A low, whispering voice filled his mind. A voice that was both familiar and strange. A voice he had heard before, but couldn't quite place. You've come. Alaric's heart skipped a beat. The forest had not just guided him here, it had been waiting for him. Act 8, The Heart of the Forest. The night air in the forest was thick with mist, swirling around Alaric as he stood before the stone. His hand still rested on its smooth surface, and the faint hum of energy in the air seemed to vibrate through his chest. He could feel the weight of it, the gravity of something ancient and powerful, as if the earth itself was breathing beneath his feet. The voice that had spoken to him was gone, leaving only a lingering echo in his mind. You've come. But who had spoken? It was a voice he couldn't quite place, yet it felt like it had always been there, waiting for him to hear it. Alaric took a deep breath, the cool air sharp in his lungs. He stepped back from the stone, his heart racing with anticipation. What now? What was this place, and why had it called him here? What did the stone, the pendant, and the house have to do with it? His eyes scanned the clearing again. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their massive trunks twisted and gnarled. The crescent moon symbol carved into the stone was unmistakable, glowing faintly in the dim light, as if it were alive. Alaric's fingers brushed the pendant again, and the warmth grew, urging him forward. He needed answers. And the forest had brought him here for a reason. Alaric stepped cautiously to the base of the stone. He noticed a small depression at its foot, just large enough to fit his hand. Without thinking, he pressed his palm into the hollow. The ground trembled beneath him. The stone shifted. A section of the stone wall slid open with a low grinding sound, revealing a hidden passageway, a dark tunnel that seemed to disappear into the depths of the earth. The entrance was narrow, and the air that wafted from within was stale, as if it had been sealed for centuries. Alaric hesitated. His heart beat loudly in his chest, the only sound in the stillness of the forest. Should he enter? Was this the answer he sought, or was this a tested trial designed to keep him from what lay below? He didn't have time to second-guess himself. The forest had already chosen him, and the house had called him. He had no choice but to follow the path laid before him. Taking a deep breath, Alaric stepped into the tunnel. The air grew colder as he moved deeper into the earth. The walls were damp, coated with moss and lichen, and the narrow passage wound downward, sloping gradually as if leading him to some ancient, forgotten chamber. His footsteps were muffled in the dark, and the faint glow from the pendant was the only light he had to guide him. Minutes stretched into what felt like hours, the silence broken only by the distant drip of water and the occasional echo of his footsteps. But then, as he rounded a bend, a soft light appeared ahead. It was dim at first, flickering like a candle's flame, but it grew brighter the closer he got. Alaric's pace quickened. He emerged into a vast underground chamber, larger than anything he had expected. The walls were lined with more of the glowing symbols, crescent moons, ivy tendrils, and patterns he couldn't fully comprehend. The floor was made of smooth stone, and in the center of the room stood a large stone pedestal. Atop the pedestal rested a book. It was ancient, its cover worn and cracked with age, but it radiated a strange, magnetic pull, as if it had been waiting for him. The air in the chamber seemed to thrum with energy as he approached the pedestal. The pendant in his pocket pulsed faster, as if it were responding to the book. Alaric reached out, his fingers brushing the edges of the book. The moment he touched it, the room seemed to shift around him. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and the air thickened, becoming heavier. His vision blurred for a split second, and when it cleared, he found himself no longer standing in the chamber, but standing in the middle of a different place. A forest. But not the one above. The trees here were taller, their trunks silvered and gleaming in the light of two moons. The air smelled of pine and ancient earth. The ground beneath his feet was soft with moss, and in the distance, a figure stood watching him. It was Elaine. But she was not the same. Her eyes, once filled with warmth, now glowed with an eerie, unnatural light. She was dressed in robes woven from what looked like moonlight, and her face was no longer the one he remembered. It was older, more worn, but still unmistakably hers. "Alaric," she said, her voice echoing through the forest as if carried on the wind. "You've come this far." He opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. The dreamlike quality of the forest, the strange beauty of the two moons in the sky, made everything feel unreal. "You have the book," she continued, her voice growing more distant. "And now you must understand." Alaric took a step forward, trying to reach her, but something held him back, a force he couldn't see, yet felt pulling him away. He reached out again, his hand trembling. "What is this place?" he asked, his voice breaking the silence. "This is the heart of it all," Elaine replied. "The place where memory and time converge. The place where the vault began." She stepped back, vanishing into the mist that had appeared around her. "The story is not over, Alaric. But it is no longer just mine. It is yours." The mist thickened, and the forest seemed to close in around him. The book in his hand grew heavier, as if urging him forward. A loud bang echoed in the distance. And with it, the forest vanished. Alaric gasped, his feet planted firmly on the cold stone of the chamber. The book was still in his hands, but the vision was gone. He blinked, the world around him steadying. The vault of echoes had spoken again. Alaric stood motionless for a moment, the book clutched in his hands. The air in the chamber was thick with the weight of what he had just witnessed. He could feel Elaine's presence lingering in the room, like a whisper in the dark. The stone pedestal began to hum, and for a moment, Alaric was unsure whether he had just dreamed everything. But the pendant, still warm against his chest, told him otherwise. The path was clear now. There was no turning back. The vault had given him the key, both the literal book and the knowledge he had unlocked within himself. And somewhere, in the depths of the forest, in the heart of this ancient place, the truth awaited. Alaric closed his eyes. The story would continue. Act 9, The Test of the Keeper. The air was thick with the weight of the book, its pages still warm from the energy that had surged through the room. Alaric stood at the pedestal, staring down at the ancient tome as the chamber around him hummed with a quiet, almost imperceptible rhythm. His heart pounded in his chest, his mind racing to make sense of everything that had just occurred. He had seen Elaine. He had heard her voice, felt her presence, but it wasn't the same Elaine he remembered. There was something different about her now. Older. More distant. The glow in her eyes, the strange aura around her, he could feel it lingering in the room, like a shadow that refused to fade. And then, the whisper in his mind. The story is not over. It is no longer just mine. It is yours. Alaric tightened his grip on the book. His fingers trembled, not with fear, but with the weight of the responsibility that had been thrust upon him. The vault had chosen him as its keeper, but what did that truly mean? What was he supposed to do with the knowledge he had unlocked? And what else was hidden within the vault, waiting for him to discover? He glanced around the chamber. The symbols carved into the stone walls still glowed faintly, as if they were alive, watching him. The air was thick with the sense of something ancient, something far beyond his understanding. But now, more than ever, he knew he had to push forward. With a deep breath, Alaric opened the book. The pages turned slowly, each one revealing more of the intricate symbols, more of the ancient language that Elaine had once studied. He traced his fingers along the lines, feeling the vibrations beneath his touch. Each word seemed to resonate with him, as though the very fabric of the house was responding. The last page was blank. Alaric's brow furrowed. He turned the page again, but it remained empty. There was no more text, no more clues. Just silence. But then, a low rumble echoed through the room. The ground beneath him trembled slightly, as if the very stones of the chamber were shifting. The pendant around his neck began to glow brighter, and the symbols on the walls flickered and pulsed in rhythm with the light. Suddenly, the book vibrated in his hands. It was as though the book had a life of its own, urging him to do something. To understand something. Alaric's breath quickened as a realization dawned on him. This wasn't just a book. It was a key to unlocking something far greater than he had ever imagined. The room around him began to change. The walls seemed to stretch and twist, and the floor beneath his feet gave way to darkness. He could hear the faint sound of water dripping somewhere in the distance, and the air grew colder, sharper. A figure appeared before him. It was Elaine again, but this time, she was different. Her eyes glowed with the same eerie light as before, but now there was a sharpness to them, a clarity that Alaric hadn't seen before. She looked at him, her expression unreadable. "The time has come, Alaric," she said, her voice echoing in the vast, empty space. "The Keeper's path is not an easy one. It will test you. It will challenge you in ways you cannot yet comprehend." Alaric took a step forward, his heart pounding in his chest. "What do you mean? What is this place?" "This is the heart of the vault," Elaine replied. "This is where the memories of those who came before you are kept. The ones who failed. The ones who were forgotten. And now, it is your turn." She paused, her gaze softening. "But not everyone who comes here is meant to stay. Some are chosen to pass. Others are not." Alaric's mind raced. Chosen to pass. What does that mean? What do I have to do? Elaine stepped forward, her presence filling the space. "The Keeper must face the test. A test of memory, a test of will. Only then can you choose what happens to the story. You will face your own past, your own mistakes. And you will decide whether to accept them or let them go. The ground beneath him shifted again, and a door appeared, a door that hadn't been there before. It was old, made of dark wood, with an intricate design carved into its surface. The same crescent moon symbol that had appeared everywhere: the vault, the book, the pendant. It was here, once again. "This is your test," Elaine said. "The door leads to your past, to the choices you've made. Only by confronting it can you move forward." Alaric stood before the door, his heart heavy with uncertainty. He reached out, his hand trembling as he placed it on the door's cool surface. The moment his fingers touched it, the door creaked open, revealing a dark, swirling void beyond. His mind flashed with memories, moments he had long buried. His childhood with Elaine. The day she disappeared. The guilt that had followed him all these years. He could feel the weight of those memories pressing down on him, threatening to crush him. But he knew he couldn't run from them. He had to face them. He stepped through the door. Alaric's breath caught as he found himself standing in a different place. The room was familiar, his childhood home. The old house where he and Elaine had spent their summers. The walls were the same, the furniture was the same, but everything felt off. The air was heavy with an eerie stillness, and the silence was deafening. "Elaine." Alaric called, his voice trembling. "Where are you?" A figure appeared in the doorway, Elaine. But not the way he remembered her. She looked distant, cold. Her eyes were empty, void of the warmth that he had once known. "You never understood," she said, her voice hollow. "You never understood what I had to do. What we both had to do." Alaric's heart raced as he took a step forward. "What do you mean? What happened?" Elaine didn't answer. She just stared at him, her expression unreadable. "You chose to forget," she whispered. "Now, you must choose to remember." The room began to darken, the walls closing in. Alaric's breath caught in his throat. The memories flooded him: pain, regret, and the day he let Elaine slip away. And in that moment, Alaric knew. The test had begun. Act 10, the heart of the memory. Alaric's vision blurred as he stepped into the familiar room, his childhood home. The walls, the furniture, everything felt wrong yet hauntingly familiar. The air was thick with tension, each breath carrying a weight that he couldn't shake. The door to the living room swung open with a creak, and there she stood, Elaine. She looked nothing like the sister he remembered, the bright-eyed girl who would chase after him in the fields, her laughter echoing in the wind. This version of her was distant, cold, her expression unreadable. "Elaine," Alaric whispered, his voice barely audible, the words scraping against his throat. "What happened? Why are you Like this. She didn't respond at first. Instead, she took a step forward, her eyes empty yet filled with something regret. Sorrow. It was impossible to say. The silence stretched between them like an insurmountable distance. You never understood, Elaine finally said, her voice a low echo in the stillness. You couldn't. You were always focused on the surface, on the things we were told. But there are deeper things you weren't meant to know. Alaric's heart pounded in his chest as he took a step closer to her. What do you mean? Why did you leave? Why didn't you tell me anything? Elaine's lips curled into a sad smile, one that seemed so foreign to Alaric. I had to leave, Alaric. The house was never just a house. And the vault. It was never just a place. It's a memory. A memory of something that should have been forgotten. The room around them seemed to shudder as the walls seemed to close in, the shadows lengthening, the air growing colder. The floor beneath Alaric's feet felt unstable, as if the entire room was on the brink of collapse. You knew, didn't you? Alaric said, his voice rising, desperation creeping in. You knew what was inside the vault. You knew what was hidden. Why didn't you tell me? Why did you make me come here? Elaine's eyes softened, though there was a sorrow in them that cut through Alaric like a knife. I didn't want you to carry this burden. But it's too late now. The house has chosen you, Alaric. You are the keeper, and it is your responsibility to understand what we've been hiding all these years. The walls of the room seemed to ripple, the air growing heavy. A dark mist began to pour from the corners, swirling around Alaric's feet. His chest tightened, and for a moment, he could feel the weight of the world on his shoulders. Understand what? He demanded, his voice shaking. What do I need to understand? Elaine's gaze shifted to the floor, and for the first time, her expression softened. It's not just about remembering. It's about choosing. What to keep, what to erase, and what to let go. The vault. It holds everything. All the memories, good and bad. But it also holds a secret, something that even I couldn't protect. Alaric's mind raced. A secret. What could be worse than everything he had already uncovered? The house. The vault. The symbols. The memories of Elaine that had haunted him for years. What secret? Alaric asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elaine's eyes met his. The secret is what made the vault necessary in the first place. The house was built to keep something from escaping. Something that wasn't a memory. Suddenly, the room darkened, and the mist intensified, wrapping around Alaric's legs, pulling him toward the floor. The walls of the house seemed to distort, bending and twisting as though they were alive, suffocating him. Alaric's heart raced. What was it? He shouted, fear clawing at his chest. What was it that you were hiding? The mist surged around him, and the floor gave way beneath his feet. He fell, tumbling into the darkness below, until... thud. He landed on cold stone. The familiar hum of the vault's energy filled his ears as Alaric scrambled to his feet. He was no longer in the house, but somewhere beneath it. The walls of the vault stretched before him, covered in the same glowing symbols he had seen before. Elaine's voice echoed in his mind. The secret isn't a memory. It's something older. Something that should have been forgotten. The pendant around his neck pulsed again, its light shining brighter than ever. Alaric looked down, his hands shaking as he clutched it tightly. He knew now that the vault was not just a collection of memories, it was a prison. A prison for something that had been locked away for a reason. A shadow flickered in the distance. Alaric turned, his breath catching in his throat. There, standing at the far end of the vault, was a figure cloaked in darkness. He could barely make out its features, but its presence was overwhelming, suffocating. It was watching him. He took a step forward, his heart thundering in his chest. Who are you? Alaric called out, his voice hoarse. The figure didn't answer. Instead, it stepped closer, its form shifting in the darkness. With each step it took, Alaric could feel the temperature drop, the air thickening with an unnatural heaviness. Then, a voice, deep and ancient, filled the room. I am the one you have kept hidden. The figure stepped into the light. It was a face Alaric had seen before, yet it was not Elaine's. The eyes were the same, but the expression was cold, lifeless. It was a reflection of him, twisted and contorted. It was the keeper's true reflection, the thing Alaric had been avoiding. The secret had been hiding inside the vault all along. Act 11, The Reflection of the Keeper. The air in the vault was thick with a palpable tension. Alaric stood frozen before the figure, his breath coming in short, sharp gasps. The darkness of the vault seemed to swell, pressing in on him from every angle, suffocating him with its weight. The figure before him, standing just at the edge of the light, was both familiar and alien, a twisted reflection of himself, a shadow of the man he had been and the man he feared to become. The voice that had spoken was deep, ancient, filled with the resonance of something far older than the house itself. I am the one you have kept hidden. Alaric's heart pounded in his chest as the figure stepped forward, revealing more of its form. It was a reflection of him, yet distorted. The eyes, the face, even the posture. But everything was wrong. The eyes gleamed with an eerie light, lifeless and cold, and the expression twisted into something almost mocking. You're me. Alaric's voice trembled as he took a cautious step back. What is this? What do you want from me? The figure tilted its head, its smile widening ever so slightly. What do I want from you? it repeated, the voice reverberating in the space. I am you. And I want what you've been avoiding. What you've always avoided. Alaric's grip tightened on the pendant around his neck. The light from it flickered faintly, pulsing in time with the eerie voice. I don't understand, Alaric said, his mind racing. Who are you really? What is this place? I am the truth you've been running from, the figure replied, its eyes glowing brighter. I am the darkness that resides within you. The keeper of all your repressed memories. The parts of you that you've buried deep, things you refuse to face. Alaric felt a chill run down his spine. The words struck him with an unsettling force. He had always known there was something he was hiding, something that had remained just out of reach. The guilt, the regret, the fear, he had buried them deep, locked away in the recesses of his mind, where he couldn't touch them. Where they couldn't touch him. But now, the truth was coming for him. You're the part of me I don't want to see, Alaric whispered, his voice faltering. The part of me I thought I could forget. The figure nodded slowly. Exactly. The vault exists to keep what you refuse to confront. The memories. The mistakes. The guilt. The shame. It all lives here, in the dark. Alaric closed his eyes, shaking his head. I didn't want to remember, he said softly. I thought if I could just bury it all, if I could forget, it would stop haunting me. The figure's smile deepened. But it doesn't stop, does it? It never does. The vault seemed to grow darker, the shadows deepening as the figure stepped closer, its presence overwhelming. The walls of the chamber now seemed to pulse with an eerie energy, like the heartbeat of something ancient. Something alive. You cannot run from yourself, Alaric, the figure said, its voice now a soft, mocking whisper. You cannot run from your own past. Alaric staggered back, his breath coming faster now. What do you want from me? What is this place really for? The figure stepped forward once more, its eyes glowing brighter than ever. You are the keeper now, Alaric. This place, the vault, exists because of you. Your choices, your actions, your memories. Everything you've hidden, everything you've ignored, it all leads here. And now, you must face it. Face me. The figure raised its hand, and the walls of the vault seemed to shift and shimmer, the symbols on the stone glowing even brighter. The shadows in the room began to move, swirling and stretching as if they were alive, reaching for Alaric. This is your test, the figure continued. You can keep running. You can keep pretending to forget. But I will always be here, waiting for you to face the truth. You are the keeper of this place. You can choose to lock everything away again, but it will never stop whispering in your mind. Never stop reminding you of what you've lost. Alaric felt a cold, sharp pain in his chest. The weight of everything his past, his mistakes, his guilt came crashing down on him all at once. The figure was right. He couldn't keep running forever. He had to face it. He had to face himself. He reached for the pendant around his neck, holding it tightly in his hand. The light from it flickered brighter, and the air around him seemed to shimmer. "I choose to face it," Alaric said, his voice steady despite the fear coursing through his veins. "I choose to remember." The figure's smile faltered, just for a moment. But then it nodded, the expression softening slightly. "Good," it said, its voice now gentler, almost approving. "The truth is never easy to accept, Alaric. But it is the only way forward." The shadows in the room began to recede, the pressure in the air lifting slightly. The mist around Alaric's feet cleared, and the vault's hum softened. The figure stepped back, its form beginning to dissolve into the air. "The vault has done its part. It has shown you the truth. Now, it is up to you to decide what to do with it." The figure was gone, leaving Alaric standing alone in the vault once more. But something had changed. The weight was still there, but it was different now. Alaric felt lighter, not because the burden was gone, but because he had finally accepted it. He had finally faced what he had spent years running from. The room seemed to settle, the light from the pendant flickering one last time before dimming. Alaric knew what he had to do now. The vault was not just a place of secrets, it was a place of choices. His choice. And now, it was time to move forward. Act 12, The Price of the Keeper. The air was thick with an oppressive silence as Alaric stood alone in the vault. The shadows of the room, once swirling and restless, had begun to settle, as if they too had acknowledged the decision he had made. The light from the pendant, still warm in his palm, flickered one last time before dimming to a soft, steady glow. He had faced the truth. He had chosen to remember. But as the weight of that choice settled over him, Alaric realized that remembering wasn't the same as understanding. The vault had shown him the truth, the parts of himself he had buried for years, the memories he had pushed away in an attempt to keep moving forward. But now that the truth was laid bare before him, he could no longer pretend it didn't matter. There was no turning back. The vault had shown him the darkness that resided within him. The things he had done, the things he had failed to do, the guilt and regret that had shaped him into who he was. And now, he was left with the knowledge that the past could never truly be erased. No matter how hard he tried, it would always be a part of him. The pendant in his hand pulsed again, the light brightening for a moment before fading back to its soft glow. It was as if the vault was waiting for him to make another decision. To decide what to do next. Alaric looked around the vault. The walls were no longer just stone, they were alive with the energy of memory. He could feel it, the hum beneath the surface, the weight of everything that had been kept hidden. The symbols on the walls pulsed with light, reminding him of what he had unlocked. But there was something else, too. Something that had always been there, waiting. He took a deep breath and began to walk, his footsteps echoing through the chamber. The path forward was unclear, but one thing was certain: he couldn't stay in the vault. He had to move forward. The choice had been made. Now, it was time to see what lay beyond it. As he stepped out of the vault, the house seemed to welcome him back, the familiar walls and rooms feeling both strange and comforting at the same time. The world outside was still, the sky a deep shade of indigo as the first stars began to appear. The storm had passed, but something still lingered in the air, an unspoken tension, a question hanging just out of reach. Alaric made his way to the study, the one place in the house where Elaine had always spent her time. The bookshelves, once filled with her notes and sketches, now stood silent. But as he walked past, something caught his eye. There, on the desk, was a small, weathered box. The same one he had seen in his dream, the one that had appeared in the vault. It was old, its surface scratched and worn from years of use, but it felt significant, like it held something important. Something Elaine had left behind. He opened the box slowly, his hands trembling. Inside was a single piece of paper, folded carefully. Alaric unfolded it, his heart racing as he read the words written in Elaine's handwriting. Alaric, I knew this day would come. The day when you would have to face everything I left behind. But you must understand there is a reason I kept these things hidden. The house, the vault, everything. It was never just about the memories. It was about protecting us from the things we weren't meant to know. You are the keeper now. And the price of that title is more than you can imagine. There are forces at work that you don't fully understand, and you must be careful. You are the key to something much larger than you can see, and there are those who will try to stop you from unlocking the truth. But you must continue. For the sake of the house, for the sake of the world outside, you must keep going. E. Alaric stared at the letter, his mind spinning. Elaine had known this would happen. She had known he would become the keeper, and she had left him these cryptic words, urging him to continue. But what was she trying to protect him from? What was hidden beneath the surface, and why had she kept it from him? The room seemed to close in around him as the weight of the letter settled in. The price of being the keeper wasn't just about protecting the memories, it was about choosing what happened next. Alaric had made his choice, but now he had to deal with the consequences. The house had changed. The vault had changed. And now, Alaric knew that he too had changed. There was no going back. The past, the present, and the future were all tangled together, and it was up to him to untangle them. He folded the letter carefully and placed it back in the box. He knew what he had to do next. The world outside was waiting. Alaric walked back to the door of the study, his mind racing. He could feel the weight of the house around him, the memories of everything that had happened here. He could feel the presence of Elaine, even though she was gone. but he also felt something else. A sense of urgency. The house had been built to protect something. And now that he was the keeper, it was his responsibility to keep it safe. But from what? As Alaric stepped outside, the first rays of dawn broke through the horizon, casting a soft glow over the land. The world outside felt new, but also heavy with the weight of the choices he had made. There was no turning back now. And as he looked toward the horizon, he knew that his journey was only just beginning. Act 13, The Keeper's Burden. The sky above was pale with the first light of dawn, the sun barely peeking over the horizon, casting long, soft shadows across the land. Alaric stood at the edge of the forest, the weight of the house and its secrets pressing down on him. The journey had already taken more from him than he had anticipated. The vault, the memories, Elaine's final words, everything had converged into this single moment. He was no longer just a visitor to the past, but its keeper, bound to protect what had been hidden for so long. But as the wind rustled the leaves around him, Alaric knew that the house was not the only thing in danger. The world outside was shifting, and the decision he made would not only affect his future, but the future of everything connected to the vault. The weight of his responsibility was heavy, but it was also clear. He was the keeper of the vault. He could no longer afford to hide in the shadows of the past. He turned toward the village of Lindywick, which lay in the distance. The quiet town had once been a sanctuary, a place where life had moved slowly, without the weight of the secrets that now haunted Alaric. But something in the air had changed. The wind had shifted, and with it, the sense of unease that had been growing in his chest. The moment he took a step toward the village, he felt it, a presence. Something was watching him. At first, he thought it was just his imagination, a product of the burden that had settled in his mind. But as he moved closer to the village, he realized it wasn't just a feeling. It was real. He could feel the gaze of someone or something tracing his every move. He didn't know why, but the pull was undeniable. Lindywick was quiet, but there was an unusual stillness to it now. The streets, which were usually filled with the sounds of townsfolk going about their business, were eerily empty. The familiar chiming of the market bell was absent. The doors of the shops were closed, and there were no children playing in the square. The village seemed on edge. As Alaric walked deeper into town, he passed by Thistle and Thread, the tailor's shop where Mari Holloway had greeted him not long ago. The shop door creaked open slightly, and Alaric stopped in his tracks. He hadn't planned on visiting anyone, but something about the quiet drew him toward it. He stepped inside. Mari was standing behind the counter, her hands trembling slightly as she worked on a piece of cloth. Her eyes met his, and for a moment, she didn't say anything. There was something in her gaze, an understanding, perhaps, or something more urgent. "You feel it too, don't you?" Mari finally said, her voice low. "The change. In the air. In the house." Alaric nodded. "I do." She took a deep breath, then set the cloth down. You need to be careful, Alaric. There are others who know what's happening, what you've done. And they don't want the truth to come out. Alaric's heart skipped a beat. Who? Mari leaned closer, lowering her voice. There are those who have been watching the house for years. They know what it holds, what it hides. And now, they want it. They want you. Before he could respond, the door to the shop suddenly slammed open, and a figure stepped inside. It was a man, tall and cloaked in dark robes. His face was hidden beneath the hood, but his presence was undeniable, an aura of power, of something far older than the house, than Lindywick itself. Mari stepped back, fear evident in her eyes. He's one of them. The man's voice was deep and resonant, as though it echoed from the very walls of the shop. Alaric Thorne, he said. We've been waiting for you. Alaric's body tensed, the pendant around his neck growing warm as the man's gaze locked onto him. I've been called the Keeper. But you've been waiting. Who are you? The man smiled, a chilling grin that never reached his eyes. I am the one who will take what is rightfully mine. The vault, the memories, the truth. And you, Alaric, are standing in my way. Alaric's heart pounded as the figure stepped forward, his shadow stretching across the room like a dark cloud. What do you want with me? Alaric demanded, his voice steady despite the fear rising in his chest. The man's smile widened. What I want is not important. What matters is what you'll do. You see, Alaric, you are the keeper of the vault. But you have no idea what that means. And you have no idea who else has a claim to its power. The air in the room grew thick, and Alaric could feel the weight of the man's words pressing down on him. He had come to understand so much about the vault, about his role in protecting it. But there was so much more he didn't know. Who are you? Alaric repeated, his voice low and commanding. The man stepped back, his form now cloaked in darkness. I am the one who will reclaim what you have kept hidden. The door slammed shut behind him, leaving Alaric and Mari alone in the shop. Alaric stood still for a moment, the man's words echoing in his mind. The vault. The truth. And whoever had come to claim it. Who was that? Alaric asked, his voice strained. Mari looked at him, her face pale. Someone who should have been forgotten. But he's back now. And he's not the only one. Alaric stepped outside, his mind spinning. The weight of the man's words clung to him like a shadow. The vault, the memories, the house. He was no longer the only one who knew its power. There were others, waiting in the wings, ready to claim what had been hidden for so long. And now, Alaric knew that his journey was far from over. The keeper had to protect what was left and confront those who sought to take it. Act 14, The Keeper Stand. The world outside felt colder now, the sky darkened with clouds that moved like shadows across the land. Alaric stood at the edge of the village, his mind swirling with what he had just learned. The man in the shop, the one who had stepped out of the shadows, the one who had claimed that he would reclaim what was hidden, was not just a threat. He was a harbinger of something far darker. The vault, the memories, the power that lay beneath the house. It wasn't just a secret. It was a force that had drawn more than just Alaric's attention. He had to protect it. He had to protect everything that had been hidden. But what if he wasn't strong enough? What if the truth wasn't something that could be protected, but rather something that would destroy everything it touched? The wind blew harshly against his coat, and Alaric pulled the collar up, bracing himself for whatever came next. The village of Lindywick felt strangely distant now. Its streets, once full of life and comfort, were now tainted by an unfamiliar tension. The sense of unease had grown, and with it, the pull of the dark figure he had encountered. But Alaric had no time for doubt. He was the keeper now. He had no choice but to face whatever came, no matter how terrifying. He turned toward the forest, toward the house at the hilltop, where everything began. The vault was waiting. And if he was to stop whoever was after it, he needed to understand the truth, fully, and as fast as possible. Back at the house, the air inside felt heavier than before. The walls seemed to breathe with him, the floorboards creaking under his weight as if the house itself was aware of his return. Alaric crossed the threshold of the familiar wooden door and made his way through the hall. He could feel the presence of the vault calling to him. It had always been there, but now, it felt more urgent, more demanding. The study was quiet, the desk still littered with papers and the box containing Elaine's letter. He didn't have time for more memories. He had to act. Alaric made his way to the stairs that led down to the underroom. The vault was buried deep beneath the house, locked away under layers of stone and earth. But it wasn't just about the vault anymore. It was about the secret it contained. The truth he had been running from. His fingers brushed the cold metal of the iron latch, and the door to the underroom creaked open. As Alaric descended into the chamber, the air seemed to grow colder. The stone walls around him flickered with dim light, the glow of the symbols cast eerie shadows across the room. The pedestal stood at the center of the chamber, the book on it, waiting for him. And beside it the same pendant that had hung around his neck, glowing faintly with the same soft pulse of energy that had guided him this far. Alaric stepped forward, the floor cold beneath his feet. His hands trembled slightly as he reached for the book again, flipping through the pages. This time, the symbols weren't just symbols, they were a guide. A map to something deeper, something far more dangerous. There, in the last pages of the book, were new markings, lines that twisted and turned, merging into a final set of words, written in Elaine's familiar script. They read, "The truth cannot be held forever, Alaric. What we have kept hidden has been waiting for someone to come and release it. But you must decide what you open, you must also protect. Choose wisely, for the truth has a price. E. Alaric's heart raced. Elaine had known this would happen. She had known someone would come to claim the vault, but she had also warned him about it. He had chosen to face the truth, but the question now was he prepared to pay the price? His eyes darted to the pendant. There was no mistaking it now. The pendant wasn't just a guide, it was the key. But to what? To unlock the vault's secrets, or to keep them locked away forever. The ground trembled beneath his feet again, and Alaric could feel a dark presence gathering, a power that was not his own. It was growing stronger. The figure who had confronted him in the shop wasn't far behind. He could feel the man's shadow creeping closer, could sense the pull of something darker closing in. The vault was about to be tested. Suddenly, the walls around him began to shift. The floor groaned under the pressure, and the symbols on the walls glowed brighter, their lines twisting and coiling in ways they had not before. The energy in the room intensified, vibrating through the stone, through the air, through his very bones. And then, a figure appeared at the entrance to the underroom. It was him. The man from the shop. The figure stepped forward, his silhouette dark against the swirling light of the chamber. He was tall, cloaked in shadows, his face still hidden beneath the hood. But his voice when it came was clear, deep, resonant. "You've made the wrong choice, Alaric," the figure said, his tone chilling. "The vault is mine. And you are nothing more than a guardian for something you cannot understand." Alaric's heart clenched, but he stood his ground. He wasn't going to back down. Not now. "The vault is not yours," Alaric replied, his voice steady, though his hands shook. "It was never meant to be owned. It's a prison, a place to protect what should never escape." The figure laughed, a sound that echoed in the chamber like a distant storm. "You don't understand, Keeper. The vault was always meant to be opened. You've only been keeping it from what it truly is. And now, it's time for the truth to be revealed." He stepped forward, his hand outstretched toward the pendant around Alaric's neck. But Alaric raised his hand, the pendant glowing brighter, pushing the figure back. The force of the light slammed into the walls, shaking the room. "You will not have it," Alaric said, his voice filled with resolve. And as the words left his lips, the room seemed to pulse with the power of the vault itself. The stone walls trembled, and the final decision was about to unfold. The keeper had made his choice. Now, he would face the consequences. Act 15, The Keeper's Fight. The vault trembled. Alaric could feel the energy in the air crackling, a power he couldn't quite comprehend building with each passing moment. The figure, cloaked in darkness, moved closer, his presence overwhelming, suffocating. Alaric's heart pounded in his chest as the room around him seemed to shift, the stone walls vibrating, the symbols on the walls pulsing with a life of their own. "You can't stop me, Keeper," the figure said, his voice low, resonant, and filled with a chilling certainty. The truth is beyond your reach, beyond anyone's reach. You think you can protect the vault, but it was never meant to be locked away. It was always meant to be opened. Alaric stood firm, his hand clutching the pendant tightly, the light from it brightening, pushing the figure back with every step. His pulse quickened, but his resolve held steady. He wasn't going to let this stranger, this shadow, take control of the vault. Not after everything he had learned, not after everything he had fought for. "You don't understand," Alaric said, his voice strong despite the fear crawling up his spine. "The vault isn't just a place of secrets. It's a prison. It holds things that should never escape." The figure tilted his head, as if amused by Alaric's words. "And yet, it is precisely what you're trying to protect that must be freed. The vault was never meant to keep things locked away forever. Its purpose is to release, to reveal the truth to those who are worthy." Alaric's grip on the pendant tightened. The light it gave off flared in intensity, casting sharp shadows across the walls. He wasn't going to let this happen. He had made a choice to face the truth, to protect the memories, and to stop those who would twist the vault to their own ends. The weight of his responsibility felt heavier than ever, but it also gave him strength. "I won't let you have it," Alaric said, his voice sharp, determined. "The truth doesn't belong to you. It belongs to everyone who has been affected by it, to everyone who has been lost because of it." The figure took another step forward, but Alaric didn't move. His feet felt rooted to the stone, his body trembling with the intensity of the power around him, but his heart was steady. This was it. This was the fight he had been dreading, the one he had known would come. "You can't stop it," the figure said again, his tone colder. "The vault will never be yours to control. It will choose who it deems worthy. And you, Alaric Thorn, are not worthy." The figure raised his hand, and the symbols on the wall seemed to react, glowing brighter, the air thickening with energy. Alaric could feel it, the pull of the vault, the call of the truth that was locked inside. It was testing him, pushing him to his limits. The force in the room grew stronger, more overwhelming. But Alaric wasn't going to give in. He lifted his hand, the pendant glowing fiercely now, its light pushing back against the darkness. "I am the keeper," he said, the words leaving his mouth with an authority he hadn't known he possessed. "I am the one who chooses to protect this truth, not to unleash it." The figure faltered for just a moment, and in that second, Alaric stepped forward. His hand reached for the pedestal, for the book, for the heart of the vault. The power in the room surged, as if the vault itself was pushing against him, trying to stop him, but Alaric wasn't deterred. The book was the key, the center of everything. If he could get to it, if he could hold it, he could stop the figure. He could protect the vault from being opened, from being corrupted. He reached the pedestal and grabbed the book, pulling it toward him with all his strength. The energy in the room grew even more intense, the light from the pendant blinding. But Alaric held fast, holding onto the book with both hands. As the figure advanced, his eyes now glowing with an otherworldly light. "You think you can control this?" the figure hissed, his form shuddering with dark energy. "The vault is not something you can stop. You are merely a vessel, a tool to keep the secret safe for a time. But it will never belong to you." Alaric turned toward the figure, his eyes blazing with a fierce determination. "I choose what the vault holds. I choose who gets to see the truth. You won't control this. Not now, not ever." The figure lunged, but as he did, the pendant flared once more, its light pulsing with an intensity that filled the room, illuminating everything around them. The walls of the vault seemed to shudder as the energy erupted, crackling with raw power. Alaric's hand closed tightly around the book, and with a forceful movement, he slammed it down onto the pedestal. The room exploded with light. When the light finally subsided, the figure was gone. The vault was silent, the oppressive energy that had filled the room dissipating into the air like smoke. Alaric stood alone, the pendant still glowing softly in his hand. He looked around the room, the reality of what had just happened settling in. The figure had vanished, but the battle was not over. The vault had tested him. And now, it had revealed to him something he hadn't fully understood until this moment. The truth wasn't just about what was locked away in the vault. It was about choosing to face it, to accept it, and to protect it from those who would misuse it. Alaric had made his choice, and now he had to live with it. He had fought to protect the truth, but the real test had only just begun. The house, the vault, the memories, they were all connected, and now Alaric had to decide what he would do with the power he had uncovered. He wasn't just the keeper of the vault anymore. He was its protector, its guardian. And the future of everything that had been hidden was now in his hands. Act 16, The Weight of the Truth. The light from the pendant faded, leaving only a faint glow that pulsed gently, like a heartbeat. The air in the vault was still, but it was different now, thicker, as if the weight of the decision Alaric had just made had lingered in the very walls of the room. He stood alone in the center of the chamber, the book still open on the pedestal, its pages now blank. The vault had accepted his choice. It had tested him, and he had chosen to protect the truth, to lock it away from those who sought to misuse it. But as the silence stretched around him, Alaric couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong. The battle was won, but the war wasn't over. He turned toward the door, his footsteps echoing in the stillness of the vault. The figure that had tried to claim the power of the vault was gone, vanished in the light, but the question still gnawed at Alaric's mind: who else knew of the vault? Who else wanted to claim its secrets? The moment he stepped outside the vault, the world around him felt different. The weight of the air had shifted, and the house seemed to pulse with energy, as though it were alive. The walls, once so familiar, now seemed like strangers, watchful, aware of the truth he had just uncovered. He wasn't sure how long he had been in the vault, but time felt distorted. The world outside was still, the wind no longer carrying the familiar hum of life. Alaric made his way to the study, the only place in the house that still held remnants of Elaine. As he passed the hallway, he could feel the shadows watching him, but he didn't look back. He couldn't. He stepped into the study and sat at the desk, the weight of the house's history pressing down on him. Elaine's letter was still there, the words she had written haunting him now more than ever. The truth was out in the open, but there was still so much he didn't understand. The house had chosen him. The vault had tested him. But the final choice what to do with the truth was his. As the days passed, Alaric couldn't shake the feeling that things were slipping through his fingers. The vault was secure, for now, but the world outside was changing. There were whispers in the village. The air was thick with a sense of foreboding. People had started to look at him differently, as though they knew something he didn't. He knew that he couldn't stay hidden forever. It was early one morning when the knock came. A single, sharp rap at the front door. Alaric's heart skipped a beat. He wasn't expecting anyone. The village had become quiet, distant, and he hadn't spoken to a soul in days. When he opened the door, there stood Mari Holloway, her face pale, her eyes wide with something Alaric couldn't place. She didn't say anything at first, just stared at him as if trying to decide what to say. "What's happened?" Alaric asked, his voice quiet, steady. Mari took a step forward, her eyes darting to the woods behind her, as though she feared someone or something was watching. "It started, Alaric. The change. The air's thick with it, and people are starting to talk. The others have come." Alaric's stomach tightened. The others. Who were they? Who are these people, Mari? Alaric asked, his tone sharper now, filled with urgency. What are they after? Mari swallowed hard, her eyes shifting nervously. They know about the vault. They know about you. About what you're protecting. Alaric's heart skipped a beat. What do you mean? Who are they? They're old, Alaric, Mari said, her voice barely above a whisper. They've been waiting. Watching the house, waiting for someone like you to come. They know about the vault. And now they're here. They want what's inside. They want the truth. Alaric's blood ran cold. The vault was meant to be a secret. The power it held was meant to stay hidden, locked away from those who would misuse it. But now it seemed as though the truth was getting out, and with it, the shadows that had followed the vault for so long. I need to go, Mari said quickly, her face taut with fear. They're coming for you, Alaric. You have to leave. You have to protect the vault. Alaric nodded, his mind racing. Where will I go? Mari hesitated for a moment, then leaned closer, her voice dropping to a whisper. There's a place, deep in the forest. The old stone ruins. It's where the truth began. If you go there, they can't follow. Not yet. Alaric's heart pounded in his chest. He knew he couldn't stay. Not here, not in the village, not with the others coming for the vault. He nodded. I'll go. But you need to get to safety too, Mari. Mari gave him a tight, nervous smile. I'll be fine. Just don't let them find you. Don't let them take the vault. The journey to the ruins was long, the forest thick with the weight of the past. The trees stood like silent sentinels, their branches reaching out, blocking the light. Alaric's footsteps were muffled in the wet ground, his mind consumed with thoughts of the others. The people who had been waiting for him. For the vault. As he approached the ruins, a sense of foreboding washed over him. The stones of the ancient structure seemed to pulse with energy, a low hum vibrating through the ground beneath him. He could feel it now, the weight of history, the burden of the truth. He reached the center of the ruins and stopped. The air was heavy with the scent of earth and moss, but beneath that, there was something else. Something older. Something that had been waiting for this moment. The pendant around his neck began to pulse. It was time. Act 17, The Ruins of Truth. The forest was alive with the sounds of distant rustling and the occasional call of a bird, but for Alaric, it felt like the whole world had gone quiet. The trees, once familiar and comforting, now loomed over him, casting long, dark shadows on the wet ground. Every step he took toward the ruins seemed to pull him deeper into the heart of a mystery that had been buried for centuries. The air was thick, heavy with the scent of earth and damp moss, and an eerie stillness had settled over the path ahead. He had left the house, left the village behind, and now, with the ruins looming ahead of him, he felt like he was stepping into another world entirely. The ruins were ancient, older than the house, older than anything he had ever encountered. They stood at the heart of the forest, hidden from the world, shrouded in mystery. The stone walls were weathered and cracked, but they still held a sense of grandeur, as though they had once been part of something far greater than anything Alaric could imagine. The pendant around his neck pulsed with a steady warmth, urging him forward. He had felt its power before, but never so strongly. It was as though the ruins themselves were calling to him, their secrets waiting to be uncovered. As Alaric approached the center of the ruins, he stopped. The stone floor was worn, the markings on the walls faded by time, but there was something undeniably alive about this place. The energy in the air seemed to thrum with power, ancient and untamed. He could feel it, like a hum beneath his skin. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves in the trees, and for a brief moment, Alaric could have sworn he heard a voice. Soft, distant, yet unmistakable. You've come. His breath caught in his throat. The voice sounded like Elaine's faint, yet so close. His heart raced as he moved deeper into the heart of the ruins. The stone walls loomed higher now, their jagged edges reaching toward the sky like the fingers of giants. Alaric's footsteps echoed in the vast emptiness as he walked, each step seeming to reverberate through the stone, like the very ruins were alive and aware of his presence. And then, as if by fate, Alaric reached the center of the ruins. A massive stone altar stood in the middle of the chamber, its surface carved with intricate symbols that seemed to pulse with the same energy he had felt earlier. The pendant around his neck grew warmer still, its glow intensifying. He reached out, his fingers brushing the cold stone surface of the altar, and the moment his skin made contact, a surge of energy coursed through him. The ground beneath him trembled, and the symbols on the walls began to glow brighter. The walls, once faded and cracked, now seemed to come alive, the ancient markings shifting and rearranging, forming a map, a guide to something deeper within. Alaric stepped back, his heart pounding as the realization hit him. The vault, the very thing he had been protecting, was not just a place of memories. It was a key. A key to something even more powerful, something far older than the vault itself. He had always known the vault was a prison, but he had never fully understood what it was holding. Now, standing in the ruins, Alaric realized that the truth was not only buried within the vault, but buried here, in the heart of the ruins, waiting to be unlocked. The symbols on the altar seemed to come alive, swirling around him in a dizzying display of light and shadow. Alaric could feel the energy building, pulsing in the air, pushing against him, testing him. And then, with a sudden crash, the ground beneath his feet split open. A deep, rumbling sound filled the air as a dark figure appeared before him. The shadows seemed to shift, coalescing into a solid form, a man, tall and cloaked in darkness. His eyes gleamed with an unnatural light, his features hidden beneath the hood of his cloak. "You are the keeper," the figure said, his voice deep and resonant. "But you cannot keep what you don't understand." Alaric's breath caught in his throat. The figure's presence was overwhelming, suffocating. He could feel the weight of the man's power pressing down on him, like a storm gathering on the horizon. "What do you want?" Alaric demanded, his voice steady despite the fear that gripped him. "What are you after?" The figure stepped forward, the shadows around him seeming to part as he moved. "I want what is mine," he said, his voice filled with quiet malice. "The truth that you have kept hidden. The power that you cannot control." Alaric took a step back, the pendant glowing brighter in his hand. "You're not going to get it," he said, his voice firm. "This place, this vault, this is not for you. You have no right to it." The figure smiled, a chilling grin that never reached his eyes. "You do not understand, Keeper. This place was never meant to be locked away. It was meant to be unleashed." The ground trembled again as the figure raised his hand. The air around them seemed to crackle with dark energy, the walls of the ruins vibrating with power. Alaric's heart pounded in his chest as the energy surged around him, pushing him to the brink. "You can't stop it," the figure said, his voice now a low growl. "The vault, the truth, the power, it all belongs to me." The pendant in Alaric's hand flared with light, and for a moment, it seemed as if the entire world had paused. The symbols on the walls glowed brighter, and Alaric felt a surge of power course through him. He wasn't sure where it came from, but he knew one thing: he had to stop this. With a fierce cry, Alaric raised his hand, summoning all the power he had felt within the vault, within the pendant. The energy around him surged, crashing against the dark figure like a tidal wave. The force of it knocked the figure back, and the ruins seemed to shake with the power that Alaric had unleashed. "You cannot control it," the figure shouted, his voice filled with rage as he staggered back. But Alaric's resolve was stronger now. He could feel the truth coursing through his veins, filling him with clarity. The power of the vault was not just a weapon, it was a responsibility. It was his responsibility. With a final, powerful surge, Alaric called upon the full force of the vault. The light from the pendant blazed, and the entire chamber exploded with energy. The dark figure screamed as the power engulfed him, his form dissolving into the light, vanishing into nothing. The ruins were silent once more. The energy in the air had dissipated, and Alaric stood alone in the center of the chamber. The symbols on the walls faded, returning to their original, faint glow. The ground was still, the echoes of the battle fading away. Alaric's breath was ragged, his body trembling with the effort it had taken to control the power. The pendant in his hand was still warm, its glow now dimmer, but still present. The battle had been won, but the question remained. What now? The ruins, the vault, the memories, everything was connected. But now, Alaric knew that his role as the keeper was far from over. The truth had been revealed, and he had protected it from those who would misuse it. But there were still forces at work, and the secrets of the vault were still waiting to be fully uncovered. He had made his choice. And now, he would face whatever came next. Act 18, The Keeper's Dilemma. The first light of dawn broke through the thick canopy of trees above, casting long shadows over the forest floor. The ruins were silent now, the echoes of the battle having long since faded. Alaric stood in the center of the stone chamber, the pendant still warm in his hand, its glow now dim but steady. He took a deep breath, feeling the weight of the decision he had just made. The battle with the shadowy figure had been intense, and for a moment, Alaric had felt as though the vault itself had been on the brink of collapsing under the pressure of the power he had unleashed. But now, as the silence settled around him, he realized that the fight had only been a part of something much larger. The energy in the air, the dark presence that had sought to claim the vault, was still there, lingering, watching. He had won. But at what cost? Alaric knew that the battle was far from over. The truth of the vault, the power within it, had not been fully revealed yet. The house, the ruins, and the memories, they were all part of something bigger. Something that he didn't fully understand yet. He turned toward the altar, the stone pedestal where the book had rested. It was now empty, its surface smooth and cold. The symbols on the walls had faded, but they had left an imprint in his mind, a constant reminder of the weight of the knowledge he carried. His hand instinctively reached for the pendant around his neck. The warmth of it reassured him, but it also reminded him of the burden he now carried. The vault had chosen him to be its keeper, but being a keeper meant more than just guarding the truth. It meant that he would be forever tied to the power that lay within the vault. The power to protect, but also the power to destroy. As he walked toward the exit of the ruins, the weight of his responsibility pressed down on him. The world outside had changed. The battle had left its mark on the world, and Alaric knew that the forces that sought the vault would not rest until they had what they wanted. The darkness was still out there, and it would come for him. He stepped into the forest, the dense trees closing in around him. The air was thick with the scent of moss and earth, and the only sound was the distant rustling of leaves in the wind. He could feel the presence of something watching him, something that had been lurking in the shadows since the moment he had made his choice. The pendant began to glow again, brighter this time, its light pulsing in time with his heartbeat. Alaric stopped in his tracks, his senses on high alert. He could feel the pull of the vault, the energy it contained, but he also felt a sense of unease. He wasn't alone. He never had been. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled. A deep rumbling echoed through the forest, the earth shaking beneath his feet. Alaric's heart skipped a beat as he looked around, trying to locate the source of the disturbance. He knew, deep down, that this wasn't just a natural occurrence. The power that had been unleashed in the ruins had stirred something ancient, something dangerous. From the shadows of the trees, figures emerged. At first, they were just silhouettes, their forms blending with the darkness, but as they stepped into the dim light, Alaric could make them out. They were cloaked figures, their faces hidden beneath hoods, their eyes glowing faintly with an otherworldly light. There were 5 of them, each one moving with a grace that sent a chill down Alaric's spine. They were no ordinary beings. These were the ones who had been waiting, the ones who had been watching the vault, waiting for the right moment to strike. One of the figures stepped forward, its hooded face hidden in shadow. Its voice, when it came, was low and cold. "You have unleashed it, Keeper," the figure said, its words echoing in the silence of the forest. "The vault's power is no longer contained. You have chosen to release the truth, but the truth is not something you can control." Alaric's grip tightened around the pendant, but he stood his ground. "I protected the vault," he said, his voice steady. "I chose to stop you from taking it." The figure laughed, a sound that sent a shiver down Alaric's spine. "You have no idea what you've done, Alaric. The truth is not something that can be controlled. It is alive. And now, you have made it your enemy." The figure's eyes glowed brighter as it stepped closer. "You think you can protect the vault, but you are merely a vessel. A tool to keep what was never meant to be kept." Alaric's heart raced as the figures closed in around him. He could feel the tension in the air, the oppressive weight of their presence pressing down on him. But he was not afraid. He had made his choice. He had faced the vault, faced the darkness within, and he would not back down now. "I am the Keeper," Alaric said, his voice filled with conviction. "And I will protect the vault, no matter what it costs me." The figure stepped back, its eyes narrowing. "You are a fool, Alaric. You think you can stop the inevitable. You cannot." With a wave of its hand, the ground trembled again, and the forest seemed to shift. The trees around them began to bend and twist, their branches reaching toward Alaric, like the fingers of something ancient and hungry. Alaric could feel the power building, the energy of the vault surging through him. He raised his hand, calling upon the pendant's light, summoning all the energy he could muster. The pendant flared brightly, pushing back against the darkness, but the figures were not deterred. They moved in unison, their eyes glowing with the same eerie light. "You cannot fight what you do not understand," the figure said again, its voice filled with menace. "You are just a child playing with forces far beyond your comprehension." The forest around them seemed to close in, the trees now towering over them like ancient sentinels. Alaric could feel the weight of the world pressing down on him. The fight wasn't just about the vault, it was about the future of the truth that had been hidden for so long. He could feel the power of the vault building inside him, pushing against the figures, pushing against everything that sought to take it. He wasn't alone. The vault had chosen him, and it would stand with him. With a final cry, Alaric unleashed the power of the pendant. The world erupted in light. When the light finally faded, Alaric stood alone in the clearing. The figures were gone, vanished into the shadows from which they had come. The forest was still, the air thick with the lingering energy of the battle. Alaric took a deep breath, his chest heavy with exhaustion. He had won, but he knew this wasn't the end. The vault's power was still out there, and others would come for it. The truth was alive, and it would not be silenced. The forest stood still around him, the ruins behind him now silent. He had faced the truth. But the question remained, what would he do with it? And more importantly, what price would he pay for keeping it? Act 19, The Keeper's Sacrifice. The world around Alaric had changed. The battle had left its mark on the land, the forest now silent and still, as if holding its breath. The light from the pendant had faded, and though the power of the vault had been briefly unleashed, the burden Alaric now carried weighed heavier than ever before. He had protected the vault, fought for it, but the truth was clear: nothing would remain hidden forever. The figures who had appeared, those shadowy figures who sought to claim the vault, had been driven back. But Alaric knew it wasn't over. They were still out there, waiting. They were watching. The world beyond the forest had been stirred, and the ripples of his actions were already spreading. Alaric stood alone in the center of the ruins, the ancient stones now silent witnesses to the power that had surged through him. He had made his choice, and in doing so, he had uncovered truths far darker than he had ever imagined. But what did it mean? What was the price for keeping the truth locked away? Could he continue living with the knowledge of what he had released into the world? The power of the vault was not something that could be controlled, not by him, not by anyone. It was alive. And now, Alaric had to make a choice. He turned back toward the forest, the path ahead now uncertain. The trees that once seemed comforting now loomed over him, their branches twisted in unnatural shapes. The pendant still pulsed faintly, its light a soft reminder of the decision he had made. He couldn't hide from it anymore. He had to move forward. As Alaric made his way deeper into the forest, the air grew colder. The shadows seemed to lengthen, stretching farther than they should. The world around him felt like it was closing in, suffocating him with the weight of the choices he had made. He had unlocked the vault's secrets, but in doing so, he had also opened the door to something he didn't fully understand. Suddenly, the trees parted ahead, and Alaric found himself standing at the edge of a cliff. Below him, the valley stretched out, the landscape bathed in the soft glow of twilight. The village of Lindywick lay far off in the distance, a small dot against the vastness of the world. Alaric could hear the distant murmur of a river winding its way through the valley, but it was not the river that caught his attention. It was the figure standing before him. The figure was cloaked in dark robes, the edges of the cloak tattered and worn. The figure's face was hidden beneath a hood, but there was no mistaking the presence. It was familiar, even though Alaric couldn't quite place it. "You've come," the figure said, its voice low and calm, almost too calm. "I knew you would." Alaric's heart skipped a beat. The voice was familiar, Elaine's voice, but it wasn't Elaine. It couldn't be. He stepped forward, his pulse racing. "Who are you?" The figure slowly raised its head, and when it did, Alaric's breath caught in his throat. It was Elaine, but her eyes were empty, dark, and void of the warmth he had known. Her face was pale, almost lifeless, and the once familiar expression of hope had been replaced with something colder. "Elaine." Alaric whispered, his voice shaking. "What happened to you?" The figure didn't respond immediately. It just stared at him, its eyes glowing faintly in the dim light. And then, when it spoke, its voice was filled with sadness, but there was something else, something darker. "You were always meant to find the truth, Alaric," it said. "But you should have left it alone. You should have stayed away from the vault. You were never meant to be its keeper. You were never meant to face it." Alaric shook his head, taking a step back. "No. I chose this. I chose to protect the vault. I chose to face the truth." The figure's eyes seemed to darken further, the shadows around it growing deeper. "The truth is not something that can be controlled, Alaric. You've opened the door, and now it will never close. The truth will consume you. It will consume everything." A wave of cold dread washed over Alaric as the figure reached out toward him, its hands stretching forward. Alaric instinctively took a step back, but the figure's hands moved faster than he could react, grasping at him with a strength he couldn't understand. He struggled against the figure's grip, but it was no use. The figure pulled him closer, its breath cold against his skin. You cannot protect it, Alaric. You cannot protect the truth forever. Alaric's heart raced as the figure's grip tightened. He could feel the energy of the vault pulsing inside him, a dark force pushing against the figure, but it wasn't enough. The pendant around his neck began to glow brighter, its light pushing against the figure, and for a brief moment, Alaric could see the truth in his mind's eye. The vault, the memories, the power, it was all connected. It was never just about the truth. It was about sacrifice. Alaric took a deep breath and made his decision. I choose to face it. With a burst of light, the figure was thrown backward, its grip released. Alaric staggered back, his body trembling with exhaustion. The pendant in his hand flared brightly, the light flooding the valley, chasing away the shadows. The figure vanished, dissolving into the light. But as it did, it whispered, "You will regret this, Alaric." The forest fell silent again. Alaric collapsed to his knees, the energy of the pendant fading as the light dissipated. The truth had been revealed, but what did it mean? What had he unlocked in the vault, and what price had he just paid? He could still feel the power of the vault within him, a force both beautiful and terrifying. He had made his choice, but the consequences were just beginning. The world around him felt different, altered by his decision. The truth was now in the open, and he couldn't turn back. But was it worth it? Alaric stood slowly, his heart heavy with the weight of his responsibility. He had faced the truth, but now he had to live with it. The path ahead was unclear, but one thing was certain, the vault had chosen him, and he had chosen to protect it. The world was waiting, and Alaric had no choice but to face what came next. All right, let's bring this journey to a close with a powerful, reflective final act. This is where Alaric faces the ultimate consequences of his choices, the weight of the truth, and the responsibility of being the keeper. Let's finish strong with an ending that reflects his transformation and the sacrifices he's made. The final act, the keeper's legacy. The sun had set, leaving only the faintest traces of light on the horizon. The world around Alaric was still, yet it hummed with an energy he couldn't quite place. The air was thick with the weight of everything he had uncovered, the choices he had made. He had walked through the darkest corners of his own soul, faced the truth that had been buried for so long, and unlocked the secrets of the vault. But now, as the night descended, a new question lingered in his mind. What was the cost? The ruins had fallen silent, their ancient stones now just a backdrop to the final chapter of his journey. Alaric stood alone in the clearing, the pendant still hanging from his neck, glowing faintly with the power of the vault. The forest stretched out before him, its trees casting long shadows over the ground. There was no longer any doubt in his mind that the world had changed. He had made his choice, but the consequences would echo through time. As he walked away from the ruins, Alaric could feel the weight of the truth pressing down on him. The vault had been meant to protect the memories, to keep the truth hidden from those who would use it for their own gain. But now, the truth was alive in him, in the very world he had once known. The forest, once a place of comfort, now seemed foreboding. The trees loomed over him like silent sentinels, their branches twisting in strange shapes. It was as though the world itself was waiting for him to make the next move. And for the first time in his life, Alaric felt the gravity of his role, the keeper. It wasn't just about protecting the vault anymore. It was about understanding its power and the impact it had on the world. The vault had chosen him, but now, he had to choose what came next. Days passed, and Alaric found himself returning to the village of Lindywick. The once quiet town was now teeming with activity, but there was an uneasy feeling that hung in the air. The people were different, their eyes wary, as if they too felt the change. The whispers of the vault's power had spread, and now everyone knew the truth. Alaric made his way to the center of the village, where he had first encountered Mari. The market was bustling, but there was an almost palpable tension among the villagers. It was clear that they, too, had felt the ripples of the truth that had been unleashed. Mari spotted him from across the square, her eyes wide with surprise. She rushed toward him, her face filled with both relief and concern. "You've returned," she said softly, her voice laced with something uncertain. "What have you done, Alaric? What has the vault shown you?" Alaric paused, his gaze shifting to the sky, where the last vestiges of daylight were fading. The world was changing, but so was he. The truth was no longer something to be hidden away. It was something that had to be faced, something that could no longer be ignored. "The vault has shown me everything," Alaric replied, his voice steady, yet tinged with the weight of what he had experienced. "The truth, the power, the responsibility, it's all mine now." Mari looked at him, her eyes searching his face for some sign of what to do next. "And what will you do with it?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. Alaric's heart sank as he looked into her eyes. He could feel the burden of his choices pressing down on him. He had never asked for this power. He had never wanted to be the keeper. But now, there was no turning back. The world needed someone to guard the truth, to protect it from those who would use it for their own gain. "I will guard it," Alaric said quietly, his voice filled with a newfound resolve. "But I won't keep it locked away. The world needs to know the truth. But it also needs someone who can protect it." The words hung in the air between them, as if the weight of them was enough to change everything. The truth was not something to be hidden away, it was something to be shared, but also protected. The power of the vault was not something that could be used recklessly. It was a responsibility that Alaric had accepted, and now, he would carry it with him. Mari nodded slowly, her expression a mixture of understanding and sorrow. "Then you will need to find a way to protect it, Alaric. There are others out there who will try to take it from you." "I know," Alaric replied, his gaze distant. "But I won't be alone in this. The vault chose me for a reason. I will find a way." The village around them seemed to quiet for a moment, as if the weight of Alaric's words had settled over the land like a shadow. He could feel the eyes of the villagers on him, their curiosity and fear palpable. They had seen what had happened to the house, to the vault. They knew that the truth was out there, but they didn't know what it meant for them. Alaric took a deep breath, looking around at the people he had once known. The world was different now, and he was different too. He had seen the truth, and it had changed him. But he knew one thing for sure: he could never go back to the way things were. The vault had given him a purpose, and now, he would fulfill it. As the sun set on the horizon, Alaric turned away from the village and made his way back to the forest. The path ahead was uncertain, but it was his to walk. The vault was his to protect, and he would carry the weight of the truth with him, no matter what came next. For the first time in his life, Alaric felt a sense of peace. He had made his choice, and he would live with it. The world would never be the same, but neither would he. And that was the price of being the keeper.